شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته، ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي اسمه في السماء بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى الجوهرة القدسية البتول الأزراء فاطمة الزهراء صلوات الله وسلامه عليها، وبعلها أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المهجلين وبنيها الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ملعونين. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shuhada, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and Rahim. It's an honor to be given this opportunity to come and speak to you, brothers and sisters, in these most difficult of times, where really the fear of God has been put into the masses. It now shows us how much truly we have the hubb ad-dunya in our hearts, that even with 3 vaccines, we're still afraid at times to meet with others. Khair, inshallah, this is one of those things. It reminds me that during the time of Akhir al-Zaman, Imam al-Kadhim salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, he has this hadith. He says, "Inna hadha al-amr la ya'tikum illa ba'da iyas." This amr, this imam, this qa'im will not come to the people until they have despaired. La wallah hatta tamayyazu. Know by Allah it is so that you may be sieved. This 2-year period that we have had has sieved many. Those that were staunch, while the masajids were closed, they turned their homes into Hussainiyas. Those that before really weren't into it anyway, found the perfect excuse not to attend the majlis of Abi Abdullah. And so, when the opportunity arose again for them to come back to the masjid, that I'm not saying that this is the case here, but then the perfect excuse was continued for them, and the masajid slowly but surely their attendance dropped. These tests, these bala that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them have a purpose. And according to this narration of the 7th Imam, it is so that the people may be sieved. What is the role of a sieve? It is that you separate the good from the bad. When traditionally people would sieve wheat or barley or things like that, is to remove the husk so that the pure kernel remains. That which is just superficial goes, and that which is of use remains. And so COVID for us has become that sieve. And there will be many more sieves that will come, because test after test will continue to come. For all of these tests are set for us. This ayah of the Holy Quran, which says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. The fifth Imam says that all of these tests are for the Shi'as in the ghaiba of the Qa'im. That they will be tested with hunger, they will be tested with fear, they will be tested with themselves, they will be tested with the fruits of their labor. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. And glad tidings to those that are patient. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Those that hold fast to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and realize that death is in the hands of Allah. I will tie my camel, but the rest is tawakkal ala Allah. Does not mean that now I take the camel and ride it away as far as I can from everything. No, one has tawakkal ala Allah. I've done my due diligence. If you take the example of COVID, I've taken my 3 jabs, I'm doing my social distancing, I've got my mask, I'm doing everything. So then what is there to fear? The rest is then that gap that remains between my work or my effort and death is tawakkal ala Allah. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And this isn't a nation that fears death. The Quran speaks about other nations that fear death. But this nation isn't one to fear death. But what happens is these tests come. And it's an opportunity for us to reflect. How deep has that disease of hubb ad-dunya taken root in our hearts? Because if you learn anything from the life of Az-Zahra salamullah alayha, it is this, that one needs to live for a higher goal. That actually this dunya is but a fleeting thing, but Zahra herself was not from this dunya. So many different narrations that she says about herself. She says that I love 3 things, min dunyakum, from your dunya. Why from your dunya? Because the Holy Prophet says, Zahra is hawra al-insiyah. Zahra is a hur in human form. Zahra is not of this dunya, Zahra was of the heavens. Zahra is hawra al-insiyah. Someone comes and asks the 6th Imam, so you say that Zahra is a hur in human form, Zahra is nur in human form. Then does that not mean that Zahra is Zahra not human? He says, no, she is hawra al-insiyah. She is a hur in human form, but her creation was before the creation of Adam. Her nur was created at the start, or before anything was created. After the creation of the nur of the Holy Prophet, her nur was created. And she was placed on the right of the arsh. And there she stayed in service to Allah. The companion says, Yabna Rasulillah, so then what did Zahra eat at that time? What did she drink at that time? What sustained Zahra in that nuri form? The reply comes from the Imam. He says the food and drink of Zahra was tahleel, was la ilaha illallah, was tahmeed, saying alhamdulillah, was takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, was tasbih, subhanallah. These were the foods of Zahra in the malakuti realms. But how will we understand who she is? من عرف فاطمة حق معرفتها فقد أدرك ليلة القدر. The one who understands Fatima as is her right to be understood, it is as if he has uncovered the night of Qadr. The night of Qadr. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. Allah says in the Holy Quran, what will you understand of the night of Qadr? It is beyond your comprehension. You will not be able to fathom the night of Qadr. But then he says, look, for you to understand, Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alf shahr. This is enough for you. That you should know that the night of Qadr is better than 1,000, is greater than 1,000 months. Otherwise, it is beyond your understanding. And the sixth Imam says, Laylatul Qadr is Fatima Zahra. It says she is the night of Qadr. And in this narration, he continues, says, وَإِنَّمَا سُمِّيَتْ فَاطِمَةً. But she has been named Fatima. لِأَنَّ الْخَلْقَ فُطِمُ عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. She has been named Fatima for this reason, that mankind will always be deprived of her true ma'rifah. If one really understood Zahra Marziyah, if one really understood who she is, it would blow an individual's mind. It would open up such levels in their own spirituality. See what the ma'rifah of al-Zahra alayhi salam does for an individual. I'll give you two narrations. The first, the eighth Imam, in reference to her, he says, Hiya Maryam al-Kubara. She is the greater Maryam. وعلى معرفتها دار القرون الأولى. And it is through her ma'rifah that the whole solar system rotates. It is the ma'rifah of al-Zahra that allows all of these constellations that you see in the heavens, in the skies, this whole universe that is moving. It is because it has ma'rifah of Zahra. And the ulama say, we can't comprehend what this truly means. What the Imam is truly trying to say here. We can only try and understand that who is Zahra. Zahra is that lady that the narration says, إِذَا دَخَلَتْ عَلَى النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وآله, when she would enter upon the Prophet صلى الله عليه وآله, the Holy Prophet would do four things. قَامَ إِلَيْهَا. The first thing he would do is that, and often people translate this as he would stand for her. But the actual words of the narration are قَامَ إِلَيْهَا. He would stand and run towards her. It's not just simply standing. He would stand and run towards her. رَحَّبَ بِهَا. And he would welcome her. وَيُقَبِّلُهَا. And he would kiss her hands. وَأَجْلَسَهَا فِي مَجْلِسِهِ. And then he would take her and place her on his seat. Four things that the Holy Prophet would do for her when she would walk in. What is odd about this action is, of all the other actions of the Holy Prophet of Islam, they all became sunnah for me and you. He brushed his teeth, it became sunnah for me and you. He combed his beard, it became sunnah for me and you. He adorned himself, or he sprayed himself with attar, it became sunnah for me and you. He wore white on Jum'ah, or he preferred to wear white, it became sunnah for me and you. He wore certain colored shoes, it became sunnah for me and you. But this action of a father for his daughter, it didn't become sunnah for me and you. It didn't even become sunnah for the Imams. Who is greater after Rasulullah than Amirul Mu'mineen? And Amir al-Mu'mineen has daughters. And then from amongst his daughters, Zainab al-Kubra. If there was anyone that Ali should stand for, was Zainab. But yet you do not see him, or you don't find any narrations that say when Zainab would enter the room, Ali qama ilayha, Ali would stand, run towards her, would meet her, would greet her, would kiss her hands, would sit her in his own seat. So it leads one to conclude that the actions of the Prophet towards his daughter Fatima were not the actions of a father towards his daughter. Because every other action that he did became sunnah for the ummah. But this action here did not become sunnah. It was as if this action was linked to something else, was not a father towards his daughter. And the answer to this conundrum comes from the Holy Quran. It says, look, he may look like a man like you, but there is a difference. He receives wahi. Now this individual, ما ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. He does not speak. He does not move or act except that which is revealed to him. So now you understand, when he stood for her, it isn't a father standing for his daughter. But when she would walk in, it is Risalat, standing and running towards Zahra. It is Risalat, welcoming Fatima. It is Risalat, bending down and kissing the hands of Zahra. It is Risalat, taking Fatima and placing her in the seat of Risalat. How will one understand who Fatima Zahra is? She is beyond understanding. فُطِمُوا عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. She's beyond understanding. And then go one step further. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْضِبْ لِغَضَبِ فَاطِمَةٍ وَيَرْضَى لِرِضَاهَا. The Holy Prophet says, and indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry when Fatima is angry. And He is happy when Fatima is happy. Surely it should be the other way around. Surely it should be Fatima is happy when Allah is happy. Fatima is happy when God is happy. Fatima is angry when God is angry. But here the narration doesn't say this. It says God is angry upon the anger of Fatima. I.e., the anger of God is linked to the anger of Fatima. When she is angry, God is angry. When she is happy, God is happy. How can we understand who this Zahra is? And over the next few nights, I'm going to look at this narration. That inna Allah, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry when Zahra is angry. And He is happy when Zahra is happy. It is an ajib statement. If one was to ponder over who is this lady, it truly is mind-blowing. That what is her maqam? What is her status? And what is it that I can gain from her? This anger. Often we look at anger, and today I want to look a little bit at anger. We look at anger as bad, and we have narrations for it. Al-ghadabu min al-shaytan, al-ghadabu min al-nar. Anger is from shaitan, anger is from fire. Al-ghadabu yufsidu al-iman. Anger corrupts the iman of a person. We have all of these narrations. And then we have all of these recommendations how to control your anger. Your Amir al-Mu'mineen says anger is insanity. Why? Because after a person has become angry and they calm down, they regret what they have just said. And he says, but if they don't regret what they said while angry, then know that the insanity has become ingrained within them. So we know that this anger is something bad. It is anger. Anger is fire. It comes from that fire within an individual. And so that's why the recommendations come. That in the same way that if you were to see a house burning, what would you do? The first thing is you'd run and get water and throw water on this fire. And if you didn't have water, you'd try and find some earth or some sand to throw on this fire. And if you didn't have earth or sand, you would try and run away. And if you couldn't run away, at the very least, you would stand and shout at the top of your voice, help me, my house is burning. This is exactly how the Aimma alayhimus salam talk about dealing with one's anger. It says, if you're angry, do wudu. If you can't do wudu, then do sajda on the earth. Do sajda on the earth. If you can't do sajda, then walk away. Walk away from that situation. Move away from it. If you're sitting, stand and walk away. If you're standing, sit down. Do something. And then if you can't, do wudu, do sajda, walk away from a situation, then shout, call out, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Calm that anger, because that is the vice of shaitan. But anger is a fire that can be extinguished if one uses these tools. But I don't want to talk about that today. For years, you guys have been hearing all of these lectures on anger and how bad it is. Today I want to look at the anger that is admirable, that is recommended for you to have, that sacred anger, that holy anger. Because that's what the narrations, they talk about it. They say, have this sort of anger. Don't have that type of anger. So we have one type of anger that is bad, second type of anger that is good. Abu Dharr becomes angry when the haqq of Amir al-Mu'mineen has been usurped and he's walking around, Ha aliyun khayrul bashar man ankara faqad kafar, banging on the doors of the Muhajirin and Ansar. Ha aliyun khayrul bashar, for surely Ali is the greatest of men. Man ankara faqad kafar, whoever has denied this has committed kufr. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying to him, Abu Dharr, this anger of yours is good. Innaka ghadibta lillah. This anger is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you see Amir al-Mu'mineen standing and giving a khutbah saying that when you see the covenants of Allah being trampled by the people, do you not feel angry? Do you not feel upset about this? So there's one type of anger that is bad, one type that is ibadat. And how that anger is shown isn't my concern. The way that anger is shown. The Holy Quran is filled with different ways. Walking away, Yunus alayhi salam, he walks away with the noon idhaba mughadiba. He walks away angry from his people. Or la'na, Nuh alayhi salam doing la'na upon his people. Or you have Sulaiman alayhi salam shouting at Hudhud when Hudhud disappears. Then where is he? Or then maybe the physical anger of Musa towards Harun. As he comes back from Mount Sinai, he grabs him and says, what have you done? All of these people have been misguided. So I don't want to look at the how that anger is shown, but rather I want to look at the narrations of the A'immah of the Holy Prophet and Hazrat Zahra alayhi salam, and show what is it that made them angry? What is it that we should actually become angry about? Because we've become quite passive, quite subdued in terms living in Western society. You know, a lot of the times we take the stance of it's not my problem, you know, each to his own, and that it's not my problem. Apathetic approach has permeated into the deen. So now when it comes to Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi Anil Munkar, to actually feel angry about certain things, it's just not there. It's like, it's not my problem. And that is reprehensible. That is what will cause the degradation of a society. That is what will cause the na'mah from a society to be lifted. And there's so many examples, I don't need to go into them. So over the next couple of nights, because we won't be able to finish all the points that I had today, inshallah we'll complete them tomorrow. I want to talk about 5 places where, when we gather all of the different narrations that talk about anger, the anger of the Imams, and all of the places they were angry, all of the things they were angry about, we can summarize it into 5 main places. And we're going to look at those 5 main places, those 5 situations. So the first situation where anger is recommended is when truth is being rejected and the rights of another are being trampled. When the haqq of another is being taken. Imam Hussain alayhi salam is living in Medina. Walid comes and he usurps one of the pieces of land that is owned by Imam Hussain. Imam writes him a letter, return my land back to me. He says no. Then Imam sends a messenger to him. Says, return the land back to me. Says, go away, I'm not returning any land back to Hussein. So then Imam Hussain himself goes. And the Marwan is the one that narrates this. He says, Hussein entered, he grabbed Walid by his collar, he lifted him up and threw him on the ground. Had him down, and it says at that point, Walid began shouting, give him back his land, give him back his land. What is here that Marwan, he says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا رَأَيْتُ جُرْأَةَ أَحَدٍ كَجُرْأَةِ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَى الْأَمِيرِ. He says, I had never seen a man with such boldness that I had seen from Hussein in regards to the Amir, in regards to Walid. When one's right is being taken away, when one's haqq has been usurped, one cannot stay quiet. One must go and fight to gain back their haqq. Imam Ali alayhi salam, during his Khilafat, is in Masjid al-Kufa, he's giving a khutbah, he says to them, then how many of you remember Ghadir? And a few people there, they put their hands up. He looks down and he sees Anas ibn Malik sitting there. He says, Anas ibn Malik, you were an eyewitness to the event of Ghadir. You were there. Don't you remember that Rasulullah said this hadith, said this hadith? He says, Ya Ali, you know, I'm old. My memory is not as good as it used to be. I've forgotten. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, now in anger, looking towards it, because this is haqq that is being denied. This is truth that is being belied. He looks at him, he says that if you're telling the truth, then no problem. But if you're lying, may Allah curse you with a disease, with a whiteness that even that turban on your head will not hide. And Anas ibn Malik is inflicted with leprosy. And he himself says, many a times, many occasions, he would say, this disease that I have is because I denied the truth of Ali's wilayah. He says, this is because I denied the truth of the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasulullah established a system of haqq. He gave us the yardstick for haqq. in Ghadir, in different times within his life. He said, look, Aliun ma'al haq wal haqqu ma'ali. Ali is with the haqq. Ali is the truth. And the truth is with Ali. And they will never separate from each other. They will remain with each other forever. And so when this haqq, the haqq of Amir al-Mu'mineen being the true leader after the Holy Prophet, leading the Muslim Ummah, is taken away, now someone must stand up and defend that haqq. Someone must stand up and defend that reality, that truth. And who is better placed to do so than az-Zahra alayhi salam? She's not going out, the khutbah fadakiyah, when you read it, it isn't a mother, it isn't a wife defending her husband. This is an individual defending her imam. This is an individual defending her imam. If Abu Dharr was to go, they could banish him, and they did. But no one is going to banish the daughter of the Prophet. So she went, and she went out, and she went to defend that truth. And she knew that no one would listen. But nowhere does it say that the mi'yar, that the measure of speaking out for truth is whether you can bring about a change or not. It doesn't say defend haqq as long as you can bring about a change. It says no, you must defend haqq whether or not you can bring about that change. You know, nowadays in this apathetic realm, and how the enemies have infiltrated our mindsets, our Hussainiyat, the various masajid around the world, you know, they'll say, oh, why are you going to go and do this protest? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. You keep on going and protesting outside that embassy, raising a voice for, I don't know, the Palestinians or the oppressed people of Bahrain. You're not even going to make a change. So what's the point? But nowhere does it say that you raise a voice against batil for supporting haqq because you're going to make a change. It says, no, you've got to do that because that is your responsibility. So she, salamullah alayha, goes and she shows her anger. She stands there, she gives her khutbah fadakiyah. فَأَنَّتْ أَنَّا. When she entered into the masjid, they say, فَأَنَّتْ أَنَّا. She let out a sigh, a cry that made everyone in the masjid cry. The daughter of Rasulullah has entered into the masjid. She does la'na on them in her salah. It's there in riwayat that she, after every salah, she would send la'na upon those who took away her haqq. She showed her anger physically when they came to ask for forgiveness, so-called, to come and see her. She turned her face away from them to show her anger. She bans them from her funeral. She tells Amir al-Mu'mineen, hide my grave. I don't want them to know where I am buried. This is her defense of the haqq. Hide my grave, Ali. Don't let them know where you buried me. In Hidayatul Kubra, this book's over 1,000 years old, there's a riwayah that says after they realized that Ali had buried Zahra and he had made multiple fake graves in Baqi so that no one would realize where it is that he actually buried Zahra, they got together with a group of women and they sent the group of women to dig up the graves that Ali had made, with the intention that dig it up, find out which is the true grave of Fatima to Zahra, and then we will go and recite Salatul Mayyit over her body. When Amir al-Mu'mineen heard this, they say Ali alayhi salam used to have a yellow abba. A yellow abba that he would only wear at the time when he was very angry. And he was so angry hearing this. They say that Ali didn't even wear the abba. He just held it in his hand and he left the house. Like many a times we have narrations with the Holy Prophet being so angry, and we'll discuss it either today or tomorrow, being so angry that he held his na'lain, his slippers in his hand. He didn't even put them in and rushed towards the masjid or rushed towards something, holding. So here Amirul Mu'mineen is holding his abba in his hand. He rushes towards Baqi'. When they saw him coming, the narration says, "Ihmarat ayna." Ali's eyes were red. The veins on his neck were bulging. فَغَضِبَ غَضَبًا شَدِيدًا. Ali had so much anger as he came towards them that the moment they saw him, all of them ran and left this place. Anger for the sake of haqq. Zahra showed it. Amirul Mu'mineen showed it. Having that anger in ourselves for the haqq, being able to fight against that batil that exists within our communities, within our families. We have to be aware. And the haqq of Zahra alayha salam, that's one thing that even the Imams, many a times now we're like, oh, the Imams didn't say anything. Someone comes to the 8th Imam, he says that, did your mother leave this world angry at the Khulafa? And the Imam, he sort of says, leave this topic. But this person insists, no, please tell me. So the Imam says to him, listen, we had a salih mother. We had a pious, honorable mother. Matat wa hiya alayhima sakhita. And she died while angry at those two. Alayhima sakhita. She died while angry at those two. وَلَمْ يَصِلْ إِلَيْنَا رِضَاهَا. And it has not reached us that she ever forgave them or was ever happy with them. So Zahra's anger was not for herself. It was not that she became injured. It was because of her Imam. The whole reason she stood at the door was in defense of the wilayah. Nothing else. It was the completion of that hujjah. We need to defend haqq. We need to get angry for the sake of haqq. We've lost that anger. We see degradation within our communities. We see people not following the deen, but yet it doesn't bother us. Now the Holy Prophet, he says that lucky are those who get to share, who get to sit under the shadow of the arsh of Allah. And the ashab that are saying with him are saying, Ya Rasulullah, who are those people that will get the shadow of the arsh of Allah? And the Holy Prophet says they have 3 qualities. One is that they accept haqq. 2, it is that when it's necessary, or when it's necessary, they speak. They don't say it's not my problem. And 3, anytime they give a command, it is based upon haqq. There's no personal agenda to anything that they do, but it is rather based upon haqq. They will be under the shadow of the arsh. So many rights get trampled around us all the time. We don't say anything. People are spreading misinformation about the deen, even from amongst us. We don't care. It's not my problem. One, because my mi'yar, my yardstick of haqq is people. Someone asks Amirul Mu'mineen, are you on haqq or are the others on haqq? Zahiran, it's either Siffin or Jamal. This person comes to Imam Ali in the middle of the battle. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says to him, listen, don't ask me whether I am on haqq or not, or whether those that are with me are on haqq or not. Your role, اعرف الحق. First identify what is truth. Learn what is truth. Then identify its people. We look for people, personalities, and what they say, yeah, that must be haqq. And so we're forever misguided. We're forever being led down the garden path by one person or another. Because we've never identified haqq in the first place. I've never had the time to go and read about the deen, to ponder over it, to really identify what it is that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were saying, what it is that the Holy Prophet came to tell us, what it is that the Holy Quran is saying. People sit there and they quote from the Holy Quran, totally taking things out of context. Right now, even in our communities, we have individuals that are, trying to reform the communities and are bringing up arguments, and people are being drawn in to these arguments. But if we'd identified the haqq beforehand, we'd realize, you know what? Every century, a group of people raise their heads that make exactly the same arguments. Every single century. And every century, the ulama of haqq come and they defend the truth, and these people disappear. And then the next century comes, and then another group of reformists or enlightened people pop their heads up. And the cycle continues. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says the same to Harith Hamadani. He says, Harith, history repeats itself. The actors change, but the themes remain the same. So when I can identify haqq, then I know who the people of haqq are. And then I align myself with them. But when I cannot identify haqq, and when the haqq has become murky for me, then atrocities can be committed against even the one that was a hur in human form, against the one that is known as Zahra. These ayyam, these days, it is as if one can hear her cries from by the side of the grave of the Prophet. Ya Ahmada, subbat alayya masa'ibun law annaha subbat ala al-ayyam sirna layaliya. Oh my Father, those sorrows that have befallen me, had they fallen upon the brightest of days, surely they would have become the darkest of nights. What is the night complaining to her father about? Zahra is Laylatul Qadr. And so when that time comes when Ali comes to bury his night in the middle of the night, he turns towards the grave of the Prophet. Kalla ya Rasulullah an safiyatika sabri. Now, Ya Rasulullah, the sabr of Ali has finished. Ya Rasulullah, you gave Ali an amana. But Ya Rasulullah, I am ashamed that this amana that I returned to you is not in the state that you gave it to me. You ask her yourself, Ya Rasulullah, what is it that this ummah did to her after your death? And in regards to me, فَأَمَّا لَيْلِي فَمُصَحَّدٌ وَأَمَّا حُزْنِي فَصَرْمَدٌ. That my nights will be filled with grief. My nights will be sleepless, my days filled with the grief. My grief will never leave me. And then he rests his face upon her grave. The Fatih of Khaybar, the conqueror of Khandaq, the champion of every battle of Islam, the defender of the Prophet of God, one that did not fear anything. Now he places his head upon her grave. نفسي على زفراتها محبوسة يا ليتها خرجت مع ذفراتي لا خير بعدك في الحياة وإنما مخافة أن تطول حياتي. Says, "Oh Zahra, how Ali wishes that he had died with you today. How Ali wishes that he too was dead on this day. Zahra, Ali, there is no pleasure left in this life for Ali after you. Zahra, Ali was not afraid of anything in his life. Khaybar, Khandak, Badr, Uhud, Hunayn. Ali was always there. Zahra, Ali was not afraid of anything in his life. وَإِنَّمَا مَخَافَةَ أَن تَطُولَ حَيَاتِي. But the only thing that Ali is now afraid of is that he must live his life without you by his side." What is it that they did to this night? They say there were multiple times they came to the door of Ali. Ali, come out, give bay'ah. Ali, come out, give bay'ah. And they would go away. But this time was different. They stood outside the door of Amirul Mu'mineen. They called out, "Ali, come out, come and give bay'ah." Zahra alayha salam goes towards Amirul Mu'mineen, takes permission while tears run down from her eyes. He kisses her hands. She walks towards the door. She stands there. She says, "What is it that you want? Leave us be." They replied to her, "Zahra, your husband has sent you out while he sits behind curtains. Zahra, send out Ali." She turns to them and says that it is not that Ali has sent me out, but rather it is the fasad that your oppression has brought me towards the door. Zahra standing behind the door. They say, "Zahra, send out Ali, leave this matter. You go, remain with the women. Leave this matter between us." She says that you know that Ali is fulfilling the wasiyah of Rasulullah. Had it not been for that wasiyah, do you think that anyone would have dared come to the door of Ali? Zahra stands by the door, pleading with them, telling them that this is the door that Wahi would come upon. This is the door that the Prophet of God would come towards. This is the door that the Holy Prophet for 6 months would come and recite ayah tathir upon this door. Will you burn down this house? They say, "Zahra, if Ali does not come out, we will burn down the house, even with you inside of it." She places her hands on the door to keep the door closed. They say they saw the hand of Zahra. He takes the whip from his slave Kunfud. He whips the hands of Zahra. Zahra pulls back her hands. She begins to cry. Imam Sadiq, when he refers to it, he says, "When my mother Zahra was being given ghusl by Ali, upon her hands was the mark of the whip of the zalim." Zahra pulls back her hands. She calls out, "Ya Abata, Ya Rasulullah, you see what this nation does to me after you. Ya Rasulullah, they have come and they have destroyed the sanctity of the house of your daughter. The door is on fire." Zahra stands there pleading with them, her hand whipped. At that moment, he says, "I kicked open the door." Zahra was crushed between the wall and the door. He writes to his letter to Muawiyah. He says, "When I realized that Zahra was behind the door, I pushed even harder until I heard the voice, the sound of her breaking ribs." Zahra falls to the ground. "Ya Fidda khudini, oh Fidda, come and take me. They've killed my child." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of these tears, Ya Allah, forgive our sins. Ya Allah, forgive the sins of our parents. Ya Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long and healthy lives. Ya Allah, those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Oh Allah, those who are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those who are in debt, clear their debts. Those who are in education, make them successful. Ya Allah, keep safe all of the azadar of Sayyid al-Shuhada around the world. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to go on the ziyarat of Abi Abdullah and the Aimma al-Athar this year and every year. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq that within our lives we see al-Baqi rebuilt. Ya Allah, destroy the enemies of Tashayyu, both internal and external. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhareen. Imam Hussain.